Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's PROLEARNZ online masterclass on creativity and design thinking. I always say this: innovation doesn't start with tools, it starts with how we think. Whether you are a student trying to bring fresh ideas into your projects, an educator looking to make learning more engaging, or a professional solving real world challenges, your creative mindset is the one skill that will never lose relevance. And that is exactly why we are here today. Not to just learn design, but to learn how to think like a designer, to observe differently, question deeply, and create intentionally. At ProLearns, we believe that learning should spark curiosity, fuel imagination, and build confidence. Our mission has always been to bring industry aligned, high impact training to learners everywhere. And today's session is another step towards empowering you with those skills the future demands. We are privileged to have with us a brilliant facilitator who truly lives and breathes design thinking. Sankalp Ray, UX strategist, research author, and a leading design professional with a decade of experience designing digital platforms for global enterprises. He has tackled complex product challenges, shaped user experiences across industries, and published independent research on AI with a focus on system design and human AI interaction. Today, he is here to simplify creativity, break down design principles, and show you how to improve any design, not just by guesswork, but by thinking smarter. So, as we begin, I encourage you to stay open, stay curious, and allow yourself to explore ideas freely. Remember, creativity is not a talent, it's a habit. And today we are building that habit together. Let's dive into the world of design thinking. Sankalp, welcome to ProLearn's online platform, and over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro. How's everyone feeling? Everyone feeling good? Let me meanwhile bring up my screen. Can you tell me if you're able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, before we begin, uh, see, it's my style is more of having a conversation. So this is going to be a conversation where I'm going to talk about what differentiates good design from something that works versus something that doesn't work. There are obviously going to be some fundamental technical principles that I think, you know, this is the pretty much the first thing that we learn in design school, and that's something that everyone uses from a brand new student to someone who has 20 years of experience. And it's really the basic foundations that always counts. So, yeah, I'm going to go through the slides, and you're not going to find too much information in the slides. So, I'm just going to go and tell you my experiences and share the viewpoint. All right, so let's get started. We are going to go through a few different things. We're going to talk about foundations. We're going to talk about universal principles. We're going to talk about rules. We're going to talk about common beginner mistakes that you can avoid. And finally, we're going to talk about something very important, how to build visual taste. So let's start with a very simple question. What makes design good? Let me start by saying this. Design is not decoration. Design is communication, right? Most people think about making things pretty, but it's about making things clear. It's about making things that don't confuse you. It's about making things that guide you to a decision instead of getting more confused. So good design feels obvious. And yes, a big part of design is communication. how you're communicating things. So I will give you an example of one of my favorite authors. And this is a book that I think a lot of people in the design field have read. It's called The Design of Everyday Objects by Don Norman. And he talks about a very simple concept: reduce friction, right? Think about it this way: you are traveling, you want to go from destination A to destination B. Your purpose as a good designer is to make that path as small and as easy as possible, right? What you want to avoid is you don't want to have too many twists and turns. You don't want to have too many lanes that are next to each other. People get confused, people get lost. So by all means, you want to reduce friction. And then let's talk about the concept of invisible design. Now, I think, we all know what this is. There's no name written, there's no brand written, but I don't think I have to say which brand this is, because anywhere in the world you go to this brand stores, they all look the same. And what makes it stand out is you're standing from this view, you're standing outside on the street, and you can look at the very end of the store, and in one glance you can look at everything that is inside the store. So there are a couple of things that is working very well, and which is the reason why a lot of people appreciate Apple the way they do. One is the simplicity, right? In one glance you can see all the products. In one glance you can see what is kept where, what is located where. And as I just said, reduce friction. You don't have to think. If you want to buy an iPad, you can already see on the right corner, just next to the shelf, the iPads are kept. If you want to buy phones, on the left side, the phones are kept. There's no guessing game. It's very precise. And that's what makes them so successful. And that's what also creates the perception like, okay, this is a phone that I'm going to pay over 1 lakh for. Now, when it comes to design, you know, it's really not something that you have to specifically categorize. It's everything, right? Uh, a text message that you send someone, a post that you put on social media, you go to a restaurant, you look at a menu that is designed, you open any kind of app that's designed, you use a table for your work that is designed, the room that you sit in that is designed. So it's pretty much everything. And what, you know, is good is there are many different fields in the creative industry, right? There are graphic designers, there are fashion designers, there are automobile designers. What I commonly see happens with a lot of young individuals is, if you are from the fashion industry, you're always only obsessed with the fashion industry. You're only looking at clothes, you're only looking at garments, you're only looking at shoes. If you are from the automobile industry, which I have a particular experience working with a lot of automobile clients, it's always about cars and bikes and trucks. But if you want to truly widen your spectrum as a designer, you need to look at different things. So if you're an automobile designer, you can look for inspiration from a fashion event. If you are a musician who makes music, you can look at, I don't know, a painting for inspiration. You can even look at an Excel sheet and, I don't know, look at the numbers and feel like, oh, maybe I can make some music out of these numbers. It's all random and it's all mixed. And that's the concept. Design is everywhere. You have to look for it, you have to look for patterns, and you have to try and give meaning to everything you see. Now let's talk about taste. Here, again, there are two distinct examples. One on the left makes you feel a certain way, the one on the right makes you feel a certain way. Let's talk about it. The one on the left, just now, like I talked about the Apple Store. It's very controlled, it's very precise, it's very consistent. You immediately know it's something that Apple does. And the best part is they do it with so much less. Because then you look at the example on the right, they're doing so much. They have every single color in the whole spectrum. There's like a full rainbow layout. But here's the thing. It's easy to say that the one on the left is good design and the one on the right is bad design. In some sense, you can say that, but good design is not about being pretty. A big part of design, other than being aesthetic, is functionality. So, what are these? So, the site on the right is a pretty popular Japanese e-commerce website. And having worked with Japanese clients, I know this is a very common pattern in Japan. They love written content. Unlike Western customers who love imagery, who love minimalism, who love, uh, white spaces and minimal things, which is what Apple does really well. And hence they have almost 80% of the US, smartphone market. The mindset of people in Japan is different. They are not convinced easily. They're not easy buyers. You can't woo them with nice photography and lighting. They need convincing. So you have to write a lot of stuff. So even though the option on the right may not seem like the most visually pleasing version, it works. And that's the decision that you sometimes have to make. Who are you making it for? And does it work for them? Which brings me to my next point. Design helps in making decisions. So going back to the example that I gave earlier, you want to go from point A to point B. Your purpose as a designer is to make that path as simple and straightforward as possible because you want to help with design, you want to help with decision making, right? So let's look at this example. If you have a Netflix subscription, I don't think I need to say this, but you probably spend 15 or 20 minutes figuring out what you're going to watch. At least I do. Because I'm not sure. Every time I open Netflix, there's so many suggestions, so many new movies. I can watch something new, or I can continue what I was watching previously. And that's the thing. So if you notice this design, you have a list of so many shows, but there's one specific that they're suggesting to you right away. They're trying to say that, okay, Money Heist is a new show, you should watch it. They're trying to reduce decision fatigue. Because if you go down this scroll and you're not able to figure out, there is something which we call as an abandonment. And this happens because of decision fatigue. So if you, let's say, open Amazon and you want to buy something, let's say you want to buy a coffee cup. You search, and then there are like 200 different coffee cups, all similar priced. They all look similar. You just can't make up your mind. You're gonna close Amazon at some point because you know, you're not ready to make a decision and you're exhausted. That's something we call decision fatigue. And to help that, you reduce the choices. So let's talk about a few things that makes the taste concept work. The first thing is clarity. So I think if you look at the image on the left versus the image on the right, I think the idea is very clear. You want to you want to introduce clarity. Now, how does that implement? See, very often as professionals, we find ourselves in situations where clients will want to overcompensate, because they want to sell to a certain person, they want to appeal to a certain customer. maybe it's not their strongest customer. So they want to go that extra step. And the mistake they end up making is they end up overcompensating. They end up putting too many things like, hey, here's something that you might like, here's also something that you might like, and here's also something that you might like. And that's how you end up with the image on the left, where there is an issue with clarity. So whenever you're designing something, make sure that you have the requirements clear. Like these are the things that I want to make, and this is the order in which I want to make them. Anything that is excessive or extra, remove them. That's the best approach. Then let's talk about intention. This is a very important thing to understand. So on the left is an IKEA warehouse. So if you've ever had an IKEA experience, what IKEA does is, instead of putting a typical shopping experience, they just build a warehouse. And all their products are just lined up in a warehouse like it is in the factory. And that is their experience. They have little sets built up, like basically, if you go through the living and dining section, there'll be little production sets of different dining room designs, the different kitchen room designs built up. It's all over the place, but it's intentional. So their whole point is they want you to explore throughout that huge warehouse. They want you to walk to different places. Then the example on the right is something that is very familiar to us. It's local grocery shops. You just stand there and you say what you want, and they're going to go out in the back. I don't know. They have all these shelves and everything. They're going to find it and they're going to bring it to you. That's intention. They want you to stand there at the counter and they're going to give you, whatever it is that they have. And the point is, both these designs are correct. Neither is better or worse than the other. They just have two different intentions. They're serving two different purposes. Now let's talk about, this is very important, emotion. And yeah, I think all of us know what the image on the left is. It's been there for, like, I think every generation has grown up eating Parle-G. It doesn't matter if it's designed well or not. It just has an emotional connection. Um, Big example, I had a friend who's been in the US for over 10 years. He comes to India on a visit, walks with me to a local grocery shop, and the first thing he sees is Parle-G. And it's like, he doesn't really want to buy it, but he just buys it because it's something that brings nostalgia. The image on the right are very expensive cookies. I'm not sure what these brands are, but yeah, they have really fancy packaging, but it's the emotion that makes you feel connected. It has nothing to do with price, it has nothing to do with quality, it's just an intangible thing. So here's the thing: clarity, intention, and emotion. If you can make something, if you can build something that has a very clear purpose, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. If you have a very clear intention, you know exactly where to start and where to end. And the third one, which is very tricky, it's not easy to build emotional connection with people. But if you can somehow manage to get the third one, you have what is called a good taste. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about some principles of good visual design. Sorry, before we do that, just give me one second. Yeah. Okay, yeah. The first And a very important one, space. This is the one where, majority of people fumble. Because there'll be many scenarios where either your clients will tell you, or, you know, you're just feeling insecure. You feel like you need to justify things. You need to overcompensate things. You need to have a lot of different things, to make your design feel complete. But that's not the case. Sometimes space is perceived because space has its own quality. Premium luxury brands use space a lot to convey that they don't need to sell you. It's confidence, right? They can put one image of the product, write one little text, give you a insanely high price, and then that's it. There's no explanation. There's no like, here's three reasons why I should buy it. Here's a 50% discount. Nothing. It's just, here's what we have. Here's what you got to do, and that's it. And that's confidence. And that is exactly what premium luxury brands use to convey status. Then this is a very fundamental thing, alignment. Now, this has to do with the nature of how we read things. By nature, we read things from left to right, from top to bottom. That's always the universal principle, left to right, top to bottom. And that's how alignment goes. If possible, you always try to follow that rule. But there are exceptions. Um, if you have ever read Japanese comics, Japanese comics are reversed. They start from the last page and go to the first page, from bottom to top. That is the exact opposite of what I just said, because that's how people have been reading comics. Um, then we come to the Middle East, the Middle Eastern countries, the countries that use Arabic. Because I've worked on a lot of projects in the Middle East. They read from right to left. Everything is reversed for them. So yes, there is a universal principles because most Latin-based languages read from left to right, top to bottom, but there are exceptions to the case. But either ways, the point to remember is you must understand what is the reading order, and you must try to have as many elements in that order, unless you're trying to create contrast. This is when you break the rule. You're trying to do something different to get someone's attention. And contrast comes in many different forms. You can have contrast by using two different fonts. You can have contrast by using two different colors. You can have contrast by using two different shapes. You can have contrast by separating through space. You can have contrast by, you know, isolating a certain element from everything else. There are many ways to create contrast, but the whole point of contrast is to stand out. Like the whole point of alignment was to be structured. Then we talk about hierarchy, and this is probably one of the most uh, difficult to implement visual principle, because we talk about hierarchy every single day in every single project, because it's always relative. So what exactly does hierarchy mean? So if you look at the examples, the one on the left and the one on the right, the most foundational explanation of hierarchy is it creates separation for you to digest things better, for you to understand things simpler, right? So in design, we have this concept called a cognitive load. What a cognitive load is, basically, if you go into, let's say, a website or an app, and there's just too many things, there's just too many processes, there's just too much information thrown at you. You're basically experiencing a high cognitive load. You're having to figure things out too much, and it's not simple. So it's not effective. And hierarchy is a big part of that cognitive load. So let's say you have instructions to how to open a bank account here. And those are very important instructions because you need certain documents, you need to visit a certain branch, you need to talk to a certain person. The example on the left just states it out. It doesn't create any differentiation. The example on the right is trying to create different sections for you to understand, okay, here's step one, is what you should do. Here's step two. Here are the list of documents. And that's basically what hierarchy is. It's difficult to explain it just like that, but that's what it is. It's separation, a way to make information easily digestible. Then we talk about consistency. Uh, Anytime we have visual design projects, we have branding projects, a very important part is consistency. This is what differentiates, mediocre branding projects to a very successful one. So here we are looking at Starbucks. What does consistency mean? Consistency means that Starbucks has a very specific color palette, it has a very specific set of visuals, it has a very specific feel, and that feel is carried everywhere. From their coffee cups to how their tables are arranged, how their shops are designed. You can also see it's the same visual theme they have for the employees' aprons to, the cards, the products, everything. So everything from A to Z follows that same consistency in visual language. And that's why it is Starbucks, right? Like with the Apple Store. That's why immediately this is an Apple Store. Is the consistency. Everything falls in line. Then we have something called balance. This is actually pretty easy to understand. Uh, what you don't want to do, basically, is cause, again, this goes back to the friction point. So, see, we as human beings are attracted to symmetry, right? We like to see things that are neatly organized, neatly piled, and they're symmetrical. But this can be, again, intentional. You can make something symmetrical for the purpose of giving the person viewing it satisfaction, or you can deliberately make it asymmetrical to create some sort of, emotional trigger in the person who's seeing it. And that's the two basic examples here. Again, it's always intentional. As long as it's intentional and you want to do it and you follow through with it, it works. And I'll talk about one last element here before we move on to the next section. That's typography. Now, typography makes or breaks any good design. But there are a few things you have to understand about typography. Yes, we all know about different fonts. So there are serif fonts, there are sans serif fonts. There are 100 different categories of fonts. They have each their characters, they have each their sort of ornamentation. But outside of that, there are other elements. There's something called font weight, what you see here. You go from light to medium to bold to extra bold to black. There's, this whole range of weights that we use. And it's one of the ways you can use the same font, the same size, but convey five different things by using five different weights. So you use the you know the bold one, the black one to convey the most highlighted message. That could be your heading or your title. Then you use something in between to convey intermediate information. That could be your subtitles or your subheadings. And then you use the thinnest one to convey, what is essentially just regular content. The other thing is size. You can do the same with size. Your biggest size becomes the one with the most emphasis. It becomes your title, your headline. The one in between can serve as your subheader or subheadings, and then smaller ones can convey, less important information. So type weight and type size. The combination of both of these creates type hierarchy, and that's very important. So let's go through the list again. We have space. You want space to convey a certain message. It's just like they say, silence speaks louder than words. Space speaks louder than unnecessary elements. You want alignment because you want people to read things easily, left to right, top to bottom, or in some cases in different countries, they have different patterns, so you want to follow that. Contrast because you want certain things to stand out, right? If you have a lot of content on a single page, you want the button to stand out from which they take the action. So you want to give that contrast. Hierarchy. You want different categories of information to be understandable to whoever is, going through it. Consistency. You want to follow through from point A to point B. Everything should be consistent. It should be a consistent visual language, because if you do that, then people start to recognize your brand. Simplicity. Yeah, you don't have to make things complex because people like simple things because they're relatable. Balance. Balance has two different perspectives to it. You can either go after symmetry, which you know we as human beings find satisfactory, or you can deliberately go after asymmetry in order to create some sort of feeling or an emotion. And last is typography. Like I said, font weights, font size. Now let's talk about some simple rules that anyone can use. I think I've gone through a lot of these different principles, a lot of these different use cases, but let's see. Very simple suggestion: use one or two fonts, and I'll tell you how you can use it. So when we create a visual style guide, which is the document that we use to convey how and what elements are being used for a brand, we have, in major cases, two fonts, sometimes even one font. And I'm talking about big brands. It's just that you have a primary font which you can use for more highlighted stuff like headers, maybe posters, maybe, ads, just anything that speaks loud and demands attention. And then you have a system font, which is what you use basically for everything else, right? So you can either do that. And then, like I said, there are many big brands who use just one font. What do? They play with font size and font weight. They have sizes all the way from 12 pixel, which is like this small, all the way to 120 pixels is like massive billboard ads. Same font. They have all the way from ultra thin, which is like almost like 2 to 3 mm, all the way to, like a black, which is like 15 mm. So they're making the best use of one single resource, that is the font. Two color discipline. Yes, this is also very important. You have one primary color and you have one accent color. Your primary color is essentially what your brand or your collateral, whatever it is you're making, right? It could be a presentation, it could be maybe a book you're publishing, maybe an album cover you're designing, maybe a t-shirt you're printing, whatever it is. You have one primary color that you want to stick from all the way through. Like if you remember the example from Starbucks, it was the green color. Starbucks has that one green color that is in every single Starbucks related thing that you see, digital or physical, whatever format it may be. It will always have that green color. And they just have white just to complement the green. That's it. It's two color discipline. Okay, let's talk about left aligned versus center aligned. Now, this is a very, uh, I would say this makes a lot of difference when it comes to refinement and design. Because what happens is you often get a lot of designs where too many things are center aligned. But when do you center align and when do you left align? Like if you see the presentation that I'm sharing right now, all of this is center aligned. Why? Because it's a single element in a bigger space. So it's meant to take the center space, it's meant to take your attention, and this is the only element in all the slides. But if you had a header, if you had a body content, if you had images, if you had buttons, if you had like, yeah, any number of different things, you would have to make that decision. And in most cases, like I said, with alignment, it would be better to left align things because it's easier to read. What happens in center aligned elements is you don't have either of the sides, the left or the right, which is, kept consistent because it just follows the center lettering. So your eyes find it more difficult to focus on one line. But yeah, it's a very small detail, but it makes a huge difference to your final output. Right, and then we come to another thing with typography. Now, I think we have already talked about the font weight and the font size. So if you are creating a project, let's say you're creating some sort of template, you're creating presentations, uh, what you want to do to help yourself organize things is just create three different styles, the large, medium, and small. And there is a very specific rule of fourths that you can follow. So if your small text is 12, your medium text can be 36, and your large text can be, let's say, 96. So you can build those things proportionately. So when you do that, what it does is it creates better hierarchy because the difference between 96 and 36 is quite wide. So you will be very easily able to differentiate them visually. The difference between 36 and 12 is quite wide. So you'll be able to differentiate them visually. So my suggestion would be create these three different hierarchies and then just, use that for whatever it is you're creating. And that way you don't have to think about it every time you're writing, every time you're making a new slide, let's say, or every time you're designing something new. You don't have to think about it. And that's why we, as designers, we always make a style guide document. It lays out what the colors are. It lays out what the type styles are. It lays out all the other, more technical things that we need. We have to do is just go back and refer to that sheet. So every time we are making a new design, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's why things remain consistent. Because every time if you started from scratch, you would build something slightly different. And that won't end up being consistent. So one font, two colors, mostly left aligned, more margin, as in good amount of spacing. Don't keep things cramped. Let them be free. Give them breathing room. And three type sizes. That's it. Very simple checklist that you can follow. And I can guarantee you, most designs that you make are going to look much better. They're going to look more balanced. Now let's talk about some beginner mistakes. This is going to be similar to what we just talked about. Too many fonts. Um, you know, there's been many situations where you want to match a different kind of font with a different kind of font. And yes, sometimes the combination is good, but sometimes it's just too much. It breaks the feel and the vibe of what you're creating, right? Same with too many colors. If you remember back to the Japanese e-commerce site design, there were just way too many colors. Somehow it works. It works for them because they want that kind of design. But in general, if you were trying to put that site outside of Japan, people would, have a very different perception of it. Filling space. Yes, again, it comes to the concept of spacing. Just because you have white space doesn't mean you have to fill it with something. Let it be there. It conveys confidence. Mixing styles, right? And that's about consistency. So, what you want to do is you want to experiment. You always want to experiment. You want to try new things. What you don't want to do is mix your foundational elements. Like if your brand color is red, you want to keep that. You want to only try shades of that red, that particular red. You don't want to all of a sudden start making things in blue, because again, it breaks the perception. Right, spacing. Yeah, I think we have already talked about it multiple times. Spacing is very important. The last thing is decorative clutter. Now, decorative clutter comes in many different forms. Decorative clutter comes when, in the pursuit of creating better hierarchy, what happens is many a times you will want to, put things into boxes. You overcompensate the hierarchy, just like you can undercompensate the hierarchy. So what you might end up doing is, okay, I have five different things, so I'm going to put it all into categories, and then inside those categories, I'm going to have more categories. And then you end up with this, complexity of trying to establish perfect hierarchy. And that is what we call decorative clutter. So a good example of that is, you know, if yeah, let's talk about Apple again. Apple does this very well. What they do is they use spacing and they just drop the content. They don't feel the need to put everything in a box. Only when it's specific features, technical features, which they want you to read them side by side, only then they will put it into cards or boxes. Otherwise, they will just let the text be free. But if they started trying to create different sections for every single thing, you just have section, 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 you would lose the feeling of it being free flowing. And that is essentially what decorative clutter is. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I'm gonna share back my screen. And yeah, now let's talk about developing visual taste. See, taste and talent are two different things. I think when it comes to design, there's a lot of talk about talent. But the thing is, anyone can be a good designer. If you can just, you know, keep the basic things in mind, what happens is over time, when you know, if let's say you're consistently looking at messy design and you're trying to figure out how to place things better, your brain starts to accept and look at patterns. The moment you start identifying patterns, that's when you start to have good visual taste. And it's also a bit about habits. Like if you start exposing yourself to cleaner visuals, minimal layouts, consistent typography, premium branding, over time you start to recognize those patterns. There is no such magical recipe that we have that we know what's good. It's a lot about conditioning and it's a lot about habits. And honestly, the best way to develop taste is to observe. So the next time when you're looking at a cafe menu, an Instagram post, maybe a poster, maybe even a packaging label, don't just look at it. Try to analyze it, try to read it. So like see what it says, you know, and then there, like all the foundational visual elements that we discussed, like the spacing, the font choices, the margin, the alignment, the tone. And just ask yourself, why does this feel right? Like this product or this particular thing, why does this feel right? Or why does this feel off? And it's when you start to have that moment of awareness, is how taste grows, essentially. Because, like I would say, a lot of people, when I first bought an Apple product, the packaging had literally nothing on it. It was a plain white pack with just the product image there. They didn't have to say anything, but I knew exactly what it is. And, I had to ask myself this question, like, is this just, is this deliberate? Is this a mistake? How is it that without having to communicate anything, they're able to communicate everything? I know exactly what I'm buying. I know what the product is. I know what it stands for. And there's no need to do anything more. So, as a daily practice, this is something that I do a lot, and this is something that designers do a lot. This is something we call a mood board. What it is essentially, if you are just going about your day, if you like something, take a screenshot, save it, um, create some sort of a board where you store all of these things. What this will do is this will help you figure out your personal style, because we all have very specific things that we like, uh, and that's what makes our individual styles. So if you just start noticing things that you like, you find a way to record them. Can be screenshots, can be cutouts if it's physical things. I mean, we used to do collage a lot. Put them in one place, put them in a board, and look at it collectively. That is your taste. That is your personal style, your taste. And once you figure out what that is, you know the direction in which you should um, explore more. So that's a little exercise that you can always do. You can build your own mood board. So let's take this session to reflect on everything. And let's talk about habits. Like I said, the one habit is just taking screenshots or recording things that you like, putting them together and going through it and understanding what are the different patterns or the visuals that make sense to you, why you like them. Um, Now, there is something, there's a very powerful tool that we use called an A/B comparison. And what it is basically, like you saw in some of my earlier slides, there is an image A and there's an image B. So it can be anything. It can be a product A and a product B. It can be any design A and any design B. And what you try to do is you just compare them. Now, the trick with this is they can be similar things. If you compare similar things, what you build is attention to detail. When most of the things for both of them are similar, you have to really look into it to find the details. The opposite of that is comparing two completely different things and seeing what makes each of them the way they are. So when you do A/B comparison, it helps you understand or it helps you perceive design better. And this is something that I would suggest is a very good tool to, sort of build your sense of judgment, to sharpen your sense of comparison, and again, just to recognize patterns better. And finally, when you surround yourself with good design, your brain will gradually learn to grasp the patterns. You don't have to necessarily study design or go through technical things. Um, then we come to what we call as an audit. And this is a big part of my everyday job. And this is a big part of a lot of designers' everyday job. It's something that we call a design audit. What it basically is you test design. You go through something that's already been designed and you know, really honestly and brutally test it. And what makes a design audit useful is the questions are very simple. You can take something that you have designed, maybe a presentation that you have made or a social media post that you have put, and you can audit your own design. So here's what you do. The basic foundations, right? You look at the spacing, you look at the positions, the placement, the hierarchy, the contrast, all of those things. And then you take little elements that you feel may not be the best. And then you ask this very important question: what if I remove this? That's the question that a lot of designers don't want to ask because they spend a lot of effort building something. And then you come and you ask them, what if I remove this? But it's a very key question because sometimes in that process you realize that by removing something, it really doesn't make any difference, which means that thing shouldn't be there in the first place. So, yeah. And then that can be anything. That can be like visual elements like icons or borders or colors or effects. When you start removing unnecessary things, clarity increases, everything becomes cleaner. And yeah, the second very important question when you're looking at any design is to ask yourself, where do my eyes go first? So, yeah, you just have to notice when you're looking at a certain thing where your eyes are attracted to the first. If you can start identifying that, you understand where to build attention, right? If your eyes don't know where to go, which means the hierarchy is wrong. And the reverse way of thinking about it is if I build something and you know what you want, if your eyes goes to the most unimportant thing in the page, then again, the hierarchy is wrong. You need to make sure that your eyes are attracted to the one that has the highest priority in your hierarchy, right? So great design gets your attention without trying. And the third question is related to one of the principles that we looked at. Does this feel intentional? Like, am I doing this because I deliberately want to do it? Or is this a mistake? Because, like I said, like if we go back to the palettes concept, uh, in most cases, you will want to go after symmetry because people like symmetry. We are very drawn to symmetry. We find it satisfying. But sometimes you deliberately want to create asymmetry. Artists do that quite a bit. Architects do that quite a bit. They deliberately break something off, and that gets your attention because you know there's just something off about it, and you have that uneasy feeling like I just wish I could make it, you know, be in place and make it all perfect and be symmetrical, and then I'd be so happy. But that's what you are banking on. You want them to feel that sense of uneasiness. So, yeah, you have to ask, is this an intentional decision or not? So, yeah, I think if I have to really concise it into one thing, if there's just one thing I would like you to remember from today is that good design is often more about removing than it is about adding. More doesn't mean better. And there's a very popular quote that we have in design: less is more. And yeah, I think that's the most relevant quote when it comes to creativity and design. Whenever something looks messy, your instinct might be to decorate it or fix it by adding elements. But great design actually happens when you simplify, clarify, and remove distractions. If something makes you stop and think, is that friction, is it bad? Then you need to understand that again, going back to the initial concept, good design feels obvious. So the user never has to ask, what should I do? How do I do this? So the more you can fix that, the better your design becomes. And finally, every element that you put should have its own purpose. It should be intentional and it should convey that. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I had in terms of theoretical content. I know I went through a lot of different concepts and I can understand it might be, a lot to grasp. So, how about we do an interactive activity? How about we do an interactive exercise? Is everyone up for it? I hope you haven't fallen asleep. Okay.
Research sir has thumbs up.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, please feel free to unmute yourselves because I'm going to need your help. So here you see a very small section of a website. All I want you to do is I want you to tell me what you think is good and what you think is bad. Does anyone want to get started? Anything. Don't have to be correct or have a, really lengthy explanation. So whatever, what is your feeling? What is your first gut instinct?
Good evening, sir. This is Rishabh
Hey,
Yadav from side.
hey.
Sir, I think this website used two color discipline and
Okay,
they used typography hierarchy also,
okay,
and they are also center aligned.
okay, okay. Good, good. Anything off that you see? Anything that you think could be improved?
I think this basket part quite messy.
Okay, okay, good, good. What else?
Right? They have too many fonts.
They do. Good catch. If you see the Glovo logo is a different font, Get Started is a different font. Get Started, food delivery and more, grocery shops, pharmacies, and anything. These three are the same font, but here is a different font, and then these two are again different fonts. So yeah, there's quite a lot of mess happening. So what could we do to fix this? Any suggestions? Okay, let's visualize this. I wanted to give you a made version, but I think it's better if you try to visualize it. Okay, so let's visualize it. Let's keep the logo where it is. I think the position is fine. There is no issues. Now, first thing, when you first glance at this design, was it clear to you what this does? Before you read the text, before you read the details, was it clear to you on first glance what it does? Yes, no, maybe?
No.
No, okay. Because when I looked at the first thing that I looked at was the logo, and I saw this, and this looks like a hot air balloon. So without seeing the rest of the screen, my assumption was this is a travel site. But turns out they were actually trying to create a map location, but this does not look like a map location. So there is misrepresentation here in terms of the logo. That's the first thing I saw. The second thing I saw was this image. And then it struck me, okay, so this is something to do with food. And then I saw food delivery and more. Okay, this is something to do with food delivery. Then it says groceries, shops, pharmacies, anything. Until or unless I would read pharmacies here, I would not have understood that there's a pharmacy there. So what this is doing is it is under delivering the services, right? So first of all, is this image really necessary? I would say it isn't. If they would have figured out the logo better, the logo itself could give you a very clear idea of what the business does. Now, what is happening here is your attention is being divided in between these two sections. You have a very distracting image, and then you have this whole section, which is actually conveying the information. So if you were to remove this image, or let's say instead of completely removing the image, you use the image in the background, right? You can use an image of someone buying groceries or someone ordering online. It can just be a backdrop. food delivery, and more. Not a very strong tagline. I would make groceries, shops, pharmacies, anything. Itself the title. Because it immediately tells you what it does. There's no room for gap, there's no room for error. So that could be essentially your title. So now you know what options you have. And then this whole section can be centrally placed. So this is the focus of the screen. Now, another question. This section that you have, which asks you what's your address, use your current location. What do you think this is for? Anyone? Well, what do you think this
For
sentence
delivery purpose.
for delivery purpose, right? But the get started is all the way to the top. Essentially, if you were to fill in your address and then you would click on get started. But the natural flow of things are broken now because you have get started all the way at the top and then you have this what's your address section at the bottom. So again, the big takeaway from this is hierarchy. This image versus this section. What is more important? It's more important to convey what the site does. This title versus this body. What is more important? It's more important to convey what you can get so that I know that this is not just groceries because the image just tells me that this is like Blinkit or Instamart or something like that. And finally, what we've talked about is hierarchy and clarity. If your address is here and the step that follows next to the address is here, it becomes very difficult for me to understand. Should I click here? Should I click here? What should I do? So everything should be in order. And that's how you do an audit. So from now on, if you go to any website, you look at any design, you can just do this simple exercise. And if you like any design, just save a screenshot and create your own mood board. And eventually, once you start seeing patterns, you will understand that this is my kind of design. This is what I like. And then you double down on that. That's how you find your style. That's how we all find our style. Okay, that was a little exercise, and we have time?
Yes, yes, we have time, 20 minutes. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's quite a bit of time. Uh, please ask questions. Anything that you feel, anything that you want to discuss.
Now it's an open forum. So if
Yeah.
you have any query, any particular thing you want to ask. And one thing, Sankalp, a few educators have joined us today. So any
Okay.
particular guidance for them to decorate the classroom or presentations for students and all, anything in particular?
Okay. Um, so I have done some work designing products for kids. And see, the basic design principles that we've all talked about, that's always going to be universal, whoever you are designing for. But there are certain color shades that are more pleasing to the eye and are easier to work with when you're designing something for children. Like, I'll tell you about one specific project. There was a smartwatch that we were designing specifically for kids 5 to 13 years old. The kid's smartwatch had a very limited functionality and was being controlled by the parents' smartwatch, basically parental control. We went through a lot of different styles and we ended up choosing blue and yellow. We ended up choosing a very pastel, very light blue and yellow. And that was through experimentation. We got a couple of kids to come over and then we did these color spectrum tests with them. Wanted to see what they're naturally attracted to. They are naturally attracted to reds, the opposite of what we chose. Right? So if you want to get their attention, you want warm colors like red, orange, yellow. Blue, we chose because we wanted to create something that's pleasing but neutral, right? Because we don't want them to constantly look at their smartwatch. That was the whole point. We want, it's kids. I know when it comes to adults, we do the complete opposite. We make the thing as shiny as possible so that, people get the attention as much as possible. But then for us, and this was more about tracking kids' activities, their vitals, and all of those things. So we wanted it to be sort of pleasant. So we went with shades of blue because it seems they perceived shades of blue as more calming. They perceive shades of red, orange, yellow as more energetic. So if you are, let's say, decorating a classroom or maybe an event or any space, keep this in mind. If you want an energetic environment, you can try warm shades. Red is also very highly associated with aggression. So don't do too much red because it's, and the thing is, see, as adults, I know there is this whole perception with this color represents this and that color represents that. And it's not like if I see red, I'm just gonna, become aggressive. But with kids, they're more sensitive to color and ambience. So choose orange, choose yellow. If you want something more calming, more neutral, choose blue. Um, I would avoid greens and purples. So here's the thing with greens and purples. Green has its own applications. Green is something that we use a lot with organic environment related stuff. With kids, green that is more towards yellow, like lime green or bright green, those kind of green still works. But green that tilts more towards blue has a very dull effect. So if you're using like darker green, that has a very dull sort of effect. And that's not generally perceived positively for if you're building something for kids. Same with purples. Purple is a very dark sort of color. When it comes to branding, purple is something that we use for very like royal or mysterious sort of vibe to it. So we use that very uh, selectively. And so, yeah, so that's just basic color principles. You can use that for a space, you can use that for presentations, you can use that for, you know, I think different places. Does that answer your question?
I hope so. So, anyone else want to share anything, any feedback or any question want to ask, any query?
Good evening, ma'am. I just want to tell that I'm currently teaching design thinking and innovation in class 12th CBSE. So I'm here to collect some information regarding design thinking and all. So,
Sure.
can you please help me to provide some notes and all for this all the information which you have shared today, or whatever you have other things, so I can uh, this will help me to teach my students.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I will share my presentation.
Yeah,
And
we will actually, the entire session has been recorded and we will publish it on our YouTube channel and share the link. I'd
Oh,
request all, you can share with your students too, those who are specifically studying this design thinking and all. So that would help. And any particular notes and all, yeah, we can get some. If you particularly want any say particular section regarding this, then we will share in the group.
fine, ma'am.
This session you will get through our YouTube channel, entire session.
so, Rishabh, since you said you are teaching design in
Yes.
12th class in school, basically,
Mhm.
what's your experience like? Because I think this is the first time. I mean, in my time, they didn't teach design specifically in schools. We only
Mhm.
learn about it in college. So I am very curious in knowing what's it like.
Uh, I- Basically, CBSE have given that skill subject introduced recently. So
Mm,
we have some limited notes available, but they have suggested some project-based task book. So in that task book, we just teach them about designing for social space, designing for public space, this type of design, and something capstone type of project we have to teach students. So these all things are there. One more thing they have added in employability skills, in which green skills, entrepreneurship, this type of things they have added.
interesting, interesting. So in your the curriculum or syllabus that you have, are they teaching about these foundational things that we talked about today, like color and type and alignment and all of those things? Is that generally there?
Uh, that is not available in class 12th, but it should be there, I think, because these
Yeah,
all are very basic things, you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's great that they are doing projects. They're building some sort of a project or a capstone, as you mentioned, in school itself. I think that's a great. It's always a good thing to build by hand. There's only so much theory you can learn in design. It's all about building and experimenting. So it's great that they're doing that. But yeah, I think yeah, when it any person, it always boils down to these foundational things. And like even for me, being 10 years plus in the industry, even when I'm interacting with directors who are 25 plus years in the industry, it's always those same things. Like the hierarchy could be better. Are you sure you want to use this font? This color doesn't feel so great. Why do you have so many things lined up? Give it more
Hmm.
space. And that's pretty much it. That's you know the biggest and the smallest design agencies and design projects. That's really what's going on. And that's why my whole take is like, you know, there is endless amount of technical knowledge and terminology that you can learn. But if you can really understand the value of basic foundations, it will take you a long way. And it's really positive to hear that school children are learning about this because if they understand these basics now, by the time they're a few years in, they will develop good visual taste.
Right, sir. Sir, one personal question I want to ask.
Yes.
In this world of moonlighting, can I find a career which offer to design?
Yeah, you can. Okay, let's talk about like what is your background and what is your interest in? Let me see if I can give you some suggestions.
For
Also,
design,
just a minute, some of our interns have also joined
Oh, okay,
today.
perfect.
So that will be helpful for them also if they want to choose a career in this field. So if you
Okay.
can share something, how to approach or how to go forward.
I mean, see, there are many different choices. So I'll tell you about my background. I studied architecture, which is different from what I'm doing right now. So it was a it was a tricky choice for me because when I was in 12th and I was looking at all these different design fields, um, there was fashion design, there was product industrial design, there was automotive design, there was communication design, which is basically your graphic design. All of these different fields were there, and because I didn't know at the time what really I specifically wanted to pursue, um, I ended up trying to chase everything. I tried and gave as many entrance exams and prepared for as many things as possible. But what really changed for me is there was this one book I read called The Fountainhead. It's basically considered a Bible for all architects. Um, Again, at the time, I was preparing for different fields. I was kind of decided to go with industrial design because I had a very strong liking with making, tech products and gadgets and all those things, and industrial design was that field. So basically anything from laptops to phones to like staplers and pens and basically anything. The design of physical products. That is what product design was. Nowadays, uh, digital products have equal presence. So as a product designer, you can be a physical product designer, like you're making physical things, or you can be a digital product designer, which is what I currently am in UX. So I think it's a matter of finding your strengths. Like for me, um, yeah, it's just that I read the book and I felt that certain inspiration. And then I explored architecture as a field to study and as a career. And I found it really attractive. So after I graduated from architecture, I practiced for 4 years. And then I explored. And now I found myself going through different fields. I've been in art direction, I've been in, the fashion industry a little bit. I've been in, the visual design graphic industry a little bit. And finally I've settled into the UI UX industry. So I've made sort of a whole loop of all these different uh, careers. And I will tell you, it's difficult, it's tricky to make a choice. So I would say go by two things. Either if you have a clear purpose, if you have a clear strength, like this is what I'm good at, find the career path that helps you with that, right? If you're good at artistic things, if you want to become an artist or an illustrator, maybe you want to pursue fine arts, maybe you want to pursue communication design. If you are good at more technical things, maybe you want to pursue UX, you know, maybe, yeah, there's something called information architecture, which is a very specific subfield. Maybe you want to follow something like that. So, yeah, I think again, it's very difficult for me to give a general advice, but there's a lot of different fields under the creative umbrella. And there is jobs for all of them. There is requirement and position for all of them. you, you for you to succeed, you need to find a niche. You need to become an expert in a very particular area and be the expert in that particular area. Then there is always opportunities for you. Is that helpful?
Rishabh sir, do you want to share about your personal
Yeah.
or your background or anything, and in which direction you want to go?
No, ma'am, I got my point from sir.
Anyone else wanna do a
Anyone
quick round?
else want to share anything? Else, let us conclude for tonight. Again, next week we will be coming up with another online session. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Sankalp, for devoting your time for the
Ab-
PROLEARNZ platform. And
ab-
maybe in future we will invite you for another session for another design topic or anything
Absolutely.
related. Yeah, I would like to invite you for career opportunities in designing field to discuss on that, so that our interns and students or professionals, even those who want to shift career, as you have been already done, shifted your career from one field to another. So that will help them as a guidance.
Perfect. Perfect. Happy to help.
Yeah, sure. Thank you all and have a nice weekend. Let us meet again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good evening.
Thank you. Stop the recording, please.
I am trying to find that. Uh,
Below is the button. Huh?
this is what happens. I don't use Zoom so much.